Hey everybody, hope you are doing good. In this particular walkthrough within the Academy, I'm going to demonstrate how to retrieve JSON data from your Supabase database table and present that inside your FlutterFlow application. And I'm also going to show you how to take a custom data type structure and then persist that back to Supabase itself. Now, the question is why would you perhaps do this? Well, you might want to be able to create a very complex kind of UI within inside of FlutterFlow. So it could be that what you've got there is you've got like lots of kind of nested lists with inside lists and all that kind of stuff. And instead of creating lots and lots of different tables to kind of store that information, you want to keep it much more simple inside your Supabase database table. And the benefit of Supabase is the fact is that it actually allows you to set a particular sort of column inside your database table as a JSON type, which then can store JSON data. Now that works really well inside FlutterFlow because of course you have custom data types, and those custom data types can be quite complex in their structure, and it's really good to be able to then build your FlutterFlow applications that can manipulate that custom data type data set, and then you can then store that back inside Supabase in a really easy way. And of course you can retrieve it, and of course you can then display and you can populate fields inside your FlutterFlow application with that particular data. So what I've done is I put together quite a simple example here, but certainly it covers quite a lot of ground here in terms of retrieving the data from Supabase, converting it into a custom data type, and of course then displaying that inside your FlutterFlow application. And what I've also done is I've created a particular component here which is going to allow you to kind of create that data structure and then persist that back to Supabase as well. So what I've done is I've created this sample. Of course, the link is in the description that accompanies this particular video, so please do check this out and get it set up. And I'm going to walk you through now on how all of this particular works. So what we're going to do first is we're going to start with just demonstrating this particular sample. Then I'm going to move into Supabase to kind of show you the very simple database table that I've created there. And then of course I'll walk through inside FlutterFlow kind of how it kind of works and functions underneath the covers, and that should hopefully give you everything that you need to kind of delve into the sample itself and then kind of work out how that can apply with your own projects. So stick around. Let's now move on to demonstrating the application inside FlutterFlow. Okay, so here we are then in run mode. I'm using in the browser here, I'm not using a mobile device because I kind of want to make sure that on the left hand side here, you're kind of seeing that data is actually coming back from our Supabase database table. And what I've done is I've got one record in my particular database here, and this is of a book. Okay, so we've got the book title, we've got a number of tags here, which is a list of strings, and then we've got a list of chapters here as well. Now, the tags and the chapters are stored inside the JSON data structure. And also as well, the pages and the words are also stored in that database structure as in the JSON data structure as well. So the title is the only kind of value that is stored inside the Supabase database row itself. Now what I can do now is I can quite simply now create a book here, and I'm just going to show you this now. I've got a very simple component. Now what this component is going to allow me to do is put in a title, so I'm just going to put Steve title here just as a little test here. Now this book might have sort of 20 pages and it may have I don't know 4,000 words, something like that. Now I can put a chapter title in here, so I'm just going to put chapter 1 here. And I'm just going to put the add here, just do another chapter like this, chapter 2, and just add this. And here the tags, I'm just going to put tag 1, and then tag 2 like that. In fact, let's just do a tag 3 just to prove that we have more than one than the chapter. So you can see here now they've kind of got that all in place now. So what I've done is by me adding these values, what I've done underneath the covers here, I've manipulated a component state variable because this create book is actually a component. So I've got a component state variable there, and what I'm doing is I'm populating that component state variable with all of these kind of values. Now that component state variable is of a particular type for the custom data type type, and I'll show you that very shortly in FlutterFlow. The only difference here is the title is really just kind of sat there as a text-filled widget, and when I hit the save book, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that title and I'm going to set the Supabase row to have that title, but everything else is going to be persisted as the JSON structure from my custom data type into the actual database table itself, and I'll show you that in just a second. So I just hit the save book here, and there you can see all of these details are displayed. So let's quickly now pop over to Supabase. Let's have a look and see how that table is set up, and then we'll walk through how that kind of functions within inside the actual sample itself. Okay, so here we are then in Supabase. You can see here, don't worry about these particular tables because they're irrelevant to this particular sample. I'm just kind of reusing a kind of like a training database table that I'm using. And I've got this one here called books. Now, of course, we're using Supabase here. I'm not using anything like sort of row level security, or I'm not signing in or anything like that, because this is really just a simple example to demonstrate the kind of the reading and the creating within inside the actual database table itself. You can see here, I've got a couple of rows, and you can see here, as I said before, this is really just the title here. The description I'm ignoring. I'm not using a description in this particular example, but the key bit is this metadata here. Now I could have called this, of course, anything I like. It can be any column in your database table. I'll just call it metadata, and it's of JSON B type here. And if I just double click on this, you can see here I've got all of this JSON data here. Now, if this hopefully might get your juices flowing a little bit, because if you are using or maybe calling out to third-party APIs, you could be storing all of that JSON data within inside this particular column within inside your row, and of course you can then use that within inside your FlutterFlow application. So I'm just simply kind of allowing the ability to actually create this data from my FlutterFlow application, but of course that can be extended to using third-party APIs, maybe like weather data or something like that, which you can then persist like this within inside your row. And of course you can then, as I said, display that within inside your FlutterFlow application. So there's lots of use cases for this JSON data to persist in your table. So as you can see here, I've got my tags, and I'm just going to go down here. There's my pages and my words. Here's the titles that I've got here from my sample book that I created. And of course, if I just go back into this one that we just created within FlutterFlow, you can see here, here's my tags and my pages and words and my chapters. So I've kind of got everything that I've kind of set out with inside my FlutterFlow application, and I'm persisting it here. So this is pretty well much it when it comes to Supabase. Is really, really straightforward. And of course, you can have many, many JSON B fields if you want to store more JSON data in there and stuff. So what we're going to now do is we're going to move over to FlutterFlow. And then let's now walk through kind of how the application kind of behaves, and I'll delve into some little bits there to hopefully help you along. And then please do check out the sample and go a little bit more deeper into how it kind of works. So let's head over to FlutterFlow now. Okay, so let's look at the home page then to see kind of how that works. And actually the home page is probably the most straightforward part of this particular application, because it's just typically doing what you would do in any FlutterFlow application. Let me kind of show you how it works. So here we're just simply, if I just kind of expand this now, so I go to my page column here, I go into my books container, and I just drill down to my books list view, which is kind of the straightforward list view that you would have in FlutterFlow here. And I've got a query that's attached to that. So you can see here that's represented here. So just move over here. You can see if I just edit this, you can see I'm just bringing the list of books back. I'm not putting any filters on or anything like that. It's just a single time query here, and I can then invoke the database refreshes when I would like. So that's as simple as it comes, listing the rows from the books. Now, if I just delve a little bit deeper into here, this is where it gets a little bit more interesting, but it's obviously very, very straightforward. Is that obviously I have my books list view, then I have my tags row, and then I have my chapter column. Now, let me quickly jump over to the custom data types, because this kind of will then hopefully set the scene to coming back to this to show you kind of how all of these pieces work. So of course, within inside Supabase, we have this kind of what you would class as more unstructured kind of JSON data, okay? But of course, we know we got chapters, we know we got tags, and we know we kind of got this like overall JSON object. So what I've done is within inside the custom data types, I've got this data type called metadata, and you can see here that I've got my words, which is just a simple integer, my pages, which is an integer. They're the kind of the numbers that I'm storing within inside my JSON structure, and then I've got my chapters and my tags. Now the key thing here is that my schema for my JSON data, it needs to map on to the structure of the JSON that you have within inside your database kind of row. So that's really important. So it's a bit like a contract between sort of FlutterFlow and how it's going to kind of map the values of inside FlutterFlow to the JSON data within inside your database kind of row. So that's really important. You want to make sure that you try to make sure that the contracts are the same. And you can see here that my chapters is a list of data and type chapter, which is this one here, and my tags is a list of strings. So you can see here, I don't need to have it here because it's just really just a list of strings. But the chapters are slightly different because, of course, they have their own data type here, and that's simply got a title in there. So if I just head again back over to Supabase and just have another look at that here, you can see here my tags, a list of strings. As you saw, it's a list of strings within inside FlutterFlow. There's my pages, there's my words, they're just numbers. And my chapters here, this is in itself is a data type itself. So it's got the title and the chapter. So two different types of lists. And that's the reason why I wanted to demonstrate that, because we've got a string list here, and then we've got a data type list here. So let's pop back over to FlutterFlow. Okay, so back in the widget tree then, let's have a look at the tag row as we was going to do before. So let's have a look and see how that is actually working, because this is slightly different to the query because, of course, in this particular point, we're kind of into the actual row of each book. But, of course, we now need to get into the metadata, we need to get into the tags, and then, of course, we want to then display those particular tags. And again, remember, the tags are just a string list, so slightly different to the actual chapters themselves. So let's have a look at the tags row then. So all I simply need to do is go up to then the children here, the dynamic children. I got a variable called tag, so every single one within inside that list is going to be of type a variable tag. And then here, this is where we need to now get that value. You can see here that we're popping into the metadata and then we're getting into the tags. So I click on the value here. You can see that what I'm doing is I'm in my books row. So of course, quite simply, here's my books row here. So I then, once I'm into that particular row, I then need to then say, well, the metadata needs to then be kind of automatically mapped to a data type. And now, of course, this is my metadata data type. Of course, once I've got that data type set, then of course I then need to actually go with inside the actual data the data type itself, and then I need to then pull out the data structure field, which is just going to be the actual tags itself. You can see here that I've got the data structure field tags, and that is all I need to do. Now, of course, I could have done chapters at this point, but I've got tags, and that is as simple as it comes. So get into the metadata, get into the tags, and then you've got each tag which will be inside that list of tags. So just hit confirm, and that is it. And then all I then need to do is go to the tag text, and here I've just quite simply mapped onto the tag item. So you can see if I edit this, you can see I've now got a tag item because we set that variable previously. And of course, I just want to then pull that tag item out, and it's just gonna, I'll just call this one, for the UI builder, just for the display here, says tag here. And that is it. I've got no further kind of changes required because, of course, this is just a simple string with inside that particular list of tags. I just hit confirm, and I'll get those then displayed. That kind of that tag row, I think it was about 3 or 4 in the particular sample data, will then get displayed. So that is using a list of strings, and of course here we've got the chapters column as well. So if I now move over to there, you can see I've got something very, very simple. I have a chapter variable name, I've got the value, we're going to go back into the chapters, I'm going to bring that up here, again same kind of thing, get the metadata to the data type. So I need to get the metadata converted to a metadata data type first. And once I've got that, of course, I've then now got data structure field itself. So if I just select that, that's the only option that I've got available. I wouldn't do to JSON here, but the data structure field, and there I've got chapters. And then we know that every single instance or every single sort of value inside that list is going to be a data structure field of one of the chapters itself. And that is it. Just hit confirm. And then, of course, I then can expand that out here. I can then say the chapter title text. And here I just got the chapter item, which is a data structure field of title. And here it is. And then I just display it. So again, very, very similar setup to then the actual tag row itself. So it's as simple as that. So you can see there isn't much difference between handling a list of kind of strings to then a list of data types, which are a custom data type of chapter. So that's it. That's as simple as it comes. Everything else is really quite straightforward here. I've got a text combination here. I'm just pulling out the metadata here of the pages value. So again, nothing special here to the data type metadata. This is all remains the same because it's based on our row. I'm going into the data structure field, and then of course I'm then pulling out the pages there. So again, same thing there. It will be for words as well. And I'm just displaying that. So that is how simple it is to display JSON data within inside your FlutterFlow kind of UI. So let's now then move on to then creating the book itself, because there's a lot more involved in creating the book, because we're kind of building up the kind of the JSON object within inside our actual page, ready to persist that back to Supabase. So let's head over to that bit now. Okay then, so here we are with the inside the create a book component. Now this is kind of where all of the magic happens. Now I need to kind of give you a little bit of upfront information here in terms of the way that this kind of component is kind of set up, because what we need to do is we need to kind of have a component state variable at the time that this component is presented with inside the FlutterFlow UI. And that's going to be important because as we make changes with inside this particular component, we're going to want to persist those values to the component state variable. Now, if you recall at the top of this particular video, I mentioned that the title is quite independent because that is a title on the actual Supabase row itself. But all of these values that I'm going to apply here are all going to be applied to the custom data type within inside of FlutterFlow itself. It's only at the point that we save the book that we then persist that metadata, that custom data type object, to the particular column within inside our Supabase row. So how does that work? Well, if we go over to the create book component here, you can see here I've got my local component state variables here, and you can see I've created one called metadata. And again, this one is just of type data type, and it's the metadata data type. So as soon as this component is initialized, then I'm going to kind of have this variable available to me ready to start persisting values from my FlutterFlow user interface. So let's now head back here. So we're not going to worry about this at the moment. I'll show you how that works very, very shortly. But these particular values, as the user is keying the data into the FlutterFlow user interface, I'm going to want to then persist those values to that component state variable, that metadata one that I've got here. And that's done really simply because all I've got is I've got one action on here, and that is on the onChange event. In fact, I'll open this one here. It's a bit easier, a bit clearer to see. So here it is, one simple action, update component state here. Now what I'm doing is I'm setting the field on the metadata here. I'm updating the field. If I say update meta, then I'm setting the value on the pages field within inside that custom data type here. And I'm just pulling out here the value from our kind of our widget itself. You can see here there's the page text field. You just get to it here, the widget state here, and then is the page text field. Similarly, I'm doing the same thing on the words one as well for the other text field, so it's exactly identical. As the user is kind of keying those values in, I'm then updating that component state variable. So that's all that I need to show you there. Just close that. And then, of course, here is the enter chapter title. Now, when you are keying the values in here, I don't have an onChange here because I'm allowing the user to kind of key the values in here. It's only when I hit the plus that I'm then creating a chapter with inside that component state variable, that metadata component state variable. So you can see here, if I just hit the little plus and open up the action trigger, in fact, click on the on tap here, you can see that I'm updating the component state. So again, with inside the metadata component state variable, I'm updating a field and I'm updating this one here. So what I'm doing is I'm saying, right, the list, the chapters list with inside that component state variable, I'm adding to the list, and it's going to be the created chapter. If I just select that, then what I'm doing here is I'm creating a data type object called chapter. This is slightly important here because if you do have these other kind of custom data types, then you are going to need to create an instance of that custom data type before you then once you've got that, you're going to then want to set the value with inside it. So that's super important. So you can see here, it's the chapter, it's the data type here, and then I'm going to set the title with inside that. And again, very similar to what I did with the pages in words, I'm then setting the chapter title text. I'm getting the value from the chapter title text field here. It's quite straightforward here. Again, widget state, chapter title text field. I've got hold of that value, and then of course I'm setting that within inside my custom data type object. And then of course that value is then added to the metadata chapters list. Okay, so hopefully that is clear. If it's not quite clear, then maybe play that back a few times in what I've just said in the last minute or so, and hopefully that should come quite clear to you. So that's all I need to do. So I've now got that chapter title in my list of chapters. And here, all I'm really doing here is just I'm clearing the text field here. This is the widget that's above it, so I can then key in another chapter. So that's it. You can see I've got that selected just there. So I'll just close that down. Now again, and what will happen is as I start adding these, of course, this list view will be responsive. It will see that component change, the values inside that local component state variable, and then it will display the chapter title here within inside the list. And here I've just got like a little action here that will simply just on the tap of this will then remove the chapter that I added to that that metadata chapters list here. I'm just doing an update field here, select that, and I'm saying remove from list, and I'm just getting the index from the list itself of the chapter item. Okay, so just have a little look through the sample. You'll see how that works. It's quite straightforward. Again, remember, I'm not persisting anything to the database at this particular point. I'm just kind of removing it from the local component state variable. So the tag works exactly the same. If I hit the little plus, open up the actions itself here, again, updating the component state, updating the metadata, adding the tag to the list of strings, and then it's as simple as it comes. The only difference here, of course, is I don't have a custom data type. I'm simply just taking the string and I'm adding it to the tags list within inside that custom data type. So a much more, well, a slightly more simplified version than using a custom data type for the chapters. And again, just here, clearing the text field here, I'm just selecting tag text field here, and that will just clear that down. And that is as simple as it comes. And of course, we can just do exactly the same thing. I can remove the tag out and all that kind of stuff. The next bit is the save book. So let's just select that, open up the here, and as all good FlutterFlow applications, you should always be kind of validating forms if you're presenting your user with a form here. I'm going to need to make sure that they put the pages in and the words. Now, if we don't have a value within inside the pages or words, so we don't put anything in there, and then you'll find that your JSON object, your custom data type, wouldn't actually have any value. So therefore, you're not going to see that within inside your JSON sort of data representation within inside your Supabase table. So just bear that one in mind. It's probably quite obvious, but I just wanted to mention that. So we validate the form. If our form is valid, then of course we then need to insert the row into our Supabase database. And you can see here is my title. So I'm literally inserting a row, selecting my books table, I'm inserting my title here, and this is quite simply, again, just as we did previously, this is pulling the title from the book title text field. There it is. So that's all I'm simply doing, and that's going to set that in the database row. And then here is the metadata. Now, would you believe it? This is really, really simple because, of course, FlutterFlow under the covers are doing kind of all the hard work for you. But really all this is kind of doing here is I'm selecting the metadata. You can see here that I'm getting the component state variable here, and I'm then saying available options to JSON, and then in fact, that is it. That's all I need to do. And all of the hard work is done for me under the covers, and that JSON representation, that kind of string that you see within inside Supabase, is then automatically going to be kind of created for us. It doesn't matter how deep your custom data types go, you're going to see this lovely representation of your JSON data automatically populated in your Supabase row. It's as simple as that. And of course, here is the bottom sheet here, and I'm just kind of dismissing this, of course, from the UI. And then, of course, that will then kind of just, once that closed down, I go to the home page, and it's going to refresh this list, and then I'm going to see my new book then created. So that is as simple, hopefully, as it comes. And just please do explore the sample here. Get that kind of set up in your database. Just have a little play with it, and hopefully it will all make sense. If you want to run this sample, of course, you just need to make sure that you go over to then your Supabase here. You set up your API URL to your database table, and of course, there's get the schema once you put your API key in, and then of course, hopefully, you'll be able to kind of do this yourself and just have a little play around on how it all works. So that is it. Hopefully you enjoyed this little walkthrough of this particular sample application, and then hopefully I've kind of explained a little bit about how this works, and hopefully you'll find that really, really useful in sort of applying to your own projects. So of course, please do check out the Academy as always, and of course, if you are watching this on YouTube, please do of course subscribe to the channel if you're not already a subscriber. But of course, if you want to become a member of the No Code Academy, then I appreciate you checking the link in the description. Please do come and check us out. It's a lovely community there, and of course lots of sample applications and walkthroughs like this as well to hopefully bolster your FlutterFlow knowledge, and of course other knowledge of course in the no-code space as well. I do cover other topics there as well, and so does the community, so please do pop over. So thank you for watching, and until the next video, I'll see you soon.